Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review of the 1989 chiller, The Woman in Black. Now, this is a TV movie that actually aired on a British cable network in 1989. Now, for those of you who aren't very familiar with this film, you might be surprised when it comes to the air date. This premiered on a major cable network on Christmas Eve. Yes, you heard that right. This film, which is considered by many to be one of the scariest movies ever made, premiered on Christmas Eve. I still can't wrap my head around that. There's nothing Christmassy about this movie. There is no holiday spirit. The only spirit you're going to get is the kind that would scare the ever-loving crap out of kids who saw this in 1989 with their parents. I don't understand the logic behind airing this on Christmas Eve. Well, I guess maybe it's a prime time slot. It's a film we put a lot of time, effort, and energy into, and we think it's going to be popular. So gather around the fire, grab some chestnuts, and watch The Woman in Black and have nightmares, kiddos. You won't be dreaming of sugar plums, you'll be dreaming of the woman in black, dancing around, trampling on your dreams, and grinning at you like a maniac and screaming at you. uh anyway, I could not believe that this came out on Christmas Eve. I just it I mean, this is the worst possible movie you can watch on Christmas or on Christmas Eve. This is one of those movies where everything is fucked, everything is dark, everything is bleak, and everyone is screwed, and you will all die. That's basically that. This is one of those movies. It puts the capital B in Bleak, and it's one of those films that is very effective when it comes to that. It has some really great mood and atmosphere. And it's a film that has so much acclaim from different sources, from sources in the UK as well as outside of it. It was ranked one of the best TV movies according to one website in their ranking. It's been had so much praise that has been given to it by various different critics over the years. And since I'm a big fan of horror and I like old-fashioned ghost stories like this, I was a little hyped going into this. And I got to be honest, folks, I thought it was okay. It was honestly it was a letdown. I was disappointed by The Woman in Black. I expected more from it. I guess part of it is my fault because I bought into the hype. Um, and maybe it's a movie, if I watched it again without the hype, it wouldn't be as disappointing. But I think some of the same flaws that it has, I definitely feel they would still exist no matter when I decide to watch it. It's one of those movies that, despite my overall misgivings, it does have some elements and aspects to it that are absolutely fantastic. I mean, there was a sequence in this film that made me curl up in a ball of absolute terror. So, this film does live up to its name in some ways as being one of the scariest films because it has one of the scariest scenes I can think of in terms of just pure fright. But as a whole, I don't think it's that good. It's one of those movies where it definitely does feel like a TV movie, despite Grenada's best efforts. It's a film that, despite the screenplay by Nigel Neal, who's a very accomplished writer who's done a lot of classic horror and sci-fi and other stuff, I don't even think it's one of his best works. I think part of it is because it's not really his own original creation. It's based on a novella of the same name by Susan Hill. So he has to. He's in a lot of ways he's stuck in a box, which I think for an author like him and for a screenwriter like him, I don't think doing him justice. He does his best work when he's able to play in his own sandbox and go outside side of the sandbox if necessary, and build another sandbox and play inside of that. Like he's one of those screenwriters that is seems to produce more effective and more compelling stories when he's in that particular environment versus just adapting previously written products. It's directed by Herbert Wise, and this direction is solid. It's nothing spectacular. There's not a single shot in this film that I can point to where I'm like, wow, what an amazing shot. Like, there are scenes in this that are well lit, that are well structured. I don't think there's anything about this direction that's particularly inconsistent in terms of quality. It's not like one of those directing jobs where like there's a few scenes that are just mind-blowingly amazing and then everything else is like lame, or it's just average, or below average, or anything like that. It's not one of those films that where the direction is going to stand out in really a way that is particularly exemplary, but it's also not going to stand out in a way that's going to bring up any sort of particular thoughts of disdain. It's not one of those kind of directing jobs. It's good enough. I think he's definitely at his strongest when it comes to getting the most out of the mood and the setting and the atmosphere. The sequences that deal with the woman in black, or sequences that are trying to create a certain feeling, in particular the sense of dread or impending doom, or things like that. And he's also really good at shooting the locations and the settings. But Grenada also provided just a wealth of wonderful sets and things like that to work with. So it's not like you really had to do that much to bring them to life. Speaking of that, like while I mentioned that, I'm gonna sing Grenada's praises, because Grenada to me is an absolutely amazing production company. At least back in the day, in their prime, they were creating art direction and production design that was on par, and in some ways even rivaled what you would see in America. Their attention to detail was second to none, and I've always been a big fan of how they recreated the particular time periods that they were setting these projects, these films, or these shows in. I am a huge fan of the Grenada Sherlock Holmes adaptations with Jeremy Brett. I love that series, and Grenada did a great job with the production and art design in that series, and they do an equally as good job here. And that's because that series was around the same time as this adaptation. So we're talking prime Grenada. And for all I know, they might have even used some of the same sets and just redressed them a little bit to make them look closer to the time period that the film took place in. The script by Nigel Neal, like I said, he's a director that works better when he is playing outside of a particular sandbox. So I didn't really feel that the screenplay was as strong as it could have been as a result. I also don't feel the characters are that strong. I think this is one of the main problems I had with this movie. I had a hard time getting connected with the characters. As a result, the film felt laborious to me in terms of its pacing. I felt moments where it could have been more suspenseful weren't as suspenseful. It was one of those movies where there was a lot of build up, and there was a lot of mystery, and there was a lot of atmosphere and mood, but I just didn't really find myself caring that much for any of the characters. In particular, the lead, I found him to be really boring. I mean, nothing against the actor, Rawlins. I thought he did a good job playing this particular character. I bought that he was this kind, sweet, well-natured, well-mannered man. But that was just kind of a boring lead for this kind of movie. I would have liked to have seen some sort of flaw in his character. Something that would just make him a little bit more interesting. But I just didn't really get that for the most part, other than a freak out that he had at the end of the movie, which seemed a little out of place. But other than that, it wasn't a character that really drew me into the story. And this is a character that you spend most of the movie with, so that's definitely a detriment. Um, but like I said, nothing against the actor. I think he did a good job. And there's something to be said about these type of individuals who are just well-natured, good-mannered, good people. I get it, but it's just after a while that kind of character is a little boring. It seems a little bit too idealistic, especially for this movie that's like all about being super bleak and dark, and this whole feel and sense of impending doom. Like, it's one of those movies where when it's over, you're like, oh, everyone's fucked, I guess. Like, it's one of those movies you watch it and you're like, yeah, the world hates you, and everyone's going to die, including you, and everyone is fucked. It's like, and especially right now, like it's like one of the worst kind of movies to watch, because you're like, oh man, such a bummer. Like, you're just bummed out for the rest of the day, because you're just like, god damn, does life really suck that much? But anyway, and I would think too, for people who lived in the UK and in England or Britain at that time, or even right now. I mean, isn't like rainy and gloomy all the time over there? Like, do you need a movie like this to really reiterate how dreary and gloomy your life is? I would think that most of the British citizens who see this are like, I see enough of this when I look outside the window every day. I don't need to be reminded of how just dreary and gloomy and dark it is outside, and how shitty life can be. Thanks. This is the greatest. This is the best Christmas present ever. You might as well have just given me a lump of coal. I mean, but I digress. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to that sort of stuff, the film definitely excels when it comes to mood and atmosphere, and Neil does a good job with that, and um, but like, and there's also a sense of mystery that's intriguing, but then I didn't really feel like it really led to anything, at least anything definitive. It was very hazy. It's one of those movies where maybe I need to watch it again. Maybe I missed something, because there's a lot of dialogue in this too. That's another aspect of this film. It's very dialogue heavy. Um, but there's this mystery about the woman in black and who she is, and so on and so forth. And you get a little taste of her backstory, but you don't get that much. So it just leaves you wanting more answers. It's one of those movies, it asks these questions and then leaves you with even more questions that don't have any answers. So it's just one of those, like, huh? It's like it's got this trail of breadcrumbs that leads to a very unsatisfying direction, and you're just like, well, okay. It's just one of those, like, and maybe the novella has more detail. I heard that the 2012 film goes more in depth on her backstory. I hope it does, because that was more interesting to me. The backstory of the woman in black and Nathaniel, all of that was more interesting to me than anything involving Kid. That's just me personally. I just thought it was a way more interesting part of this story. Kid, what's interesting about him? That's the thing, and he's the main focus. He's the focal point of the story. It's like if you had a Dracula story. It's kind of, he reminds me of Jonathan Harker. It's like if you had Dracula and there's like way more Jonathan Harker and there's like barely any Dracula. You'd be like, I'm not. I'm more interested in Dracula. I'm more interested in this vampire. What's his backstory? What's going on with this? That's honestly a great way to put it. It's like if you had a Jonathan Harker overdose version of Dracula. There's also a peculiar choice in this story, in this script, where it really does overkill a particular aspect of the plot. So when Kid goes to this house and there's these strange goings on that are happening, uh, he mainly starts hearing the sound of a carriage and a family falling in the water and drowning and screaming bloody murder. And he hears this not once, not twice, but 3 times throughout the film. And I think that by the third time, it was overkill. I don't think the third time was not necessary. It just cheapens the ghostly effect of that particular storytelling element. It cheapens it to me because it's just pure overkill. I don't know if that was in the novella or not. It might have been in the novella, but overall, I'm just not that keen on that particular approach. Now, the cast, like I said, the lead, Adrian Rawlins, Arthur Kidd, he delivers a good performance. He does what he's asked to do. You buy that he's a nice guy. And apparently, there's an interesting bit of trivia that's associated with Rawlins. Rawlins would later go on to play Harry Potter's father in the Harry Potter films. Now, Harry Potter himself, Daniel Radcliffe, he would go on to play Kid in the 2012 adaptation of this particular story. So, there's a bunch of degrees of separation with the Woman in Black franchise, apparently. Who would have knew? Who would have thunk? I thought that was, when I first heard that, I was like, wow, that's pretty trippy, actually. And it doesn't end there, because Rawlins himself would then go on to, he would play a role in the 2012 film as well, as a different character. So the connection would continue on. You also have Bernard Hepton, who plays Sam Toovey, David Draker as Hosea Freston, Pauline Moran, who plays the Woman in Black. I mean, other than Adrian Rawlins, the rest of the cast members, they're there. I wasn't really that impressed with their performances for the most part, but they weren't really particularly egregious either. It was one of those things where I'm not really that familiar with the repertoire of these particular cast members, because I'm not that familiar with British or UK actors, other than some that might have appeared in the Grenada Sherlock Holmes series. But even if I was somewhat familiar with them, I don't know them by name. I don't really know their filmographies. So, because I'm just a dumb Yank who didn't even know that it was not a BBC movie until I was told otherwise with some of my British friends. But yeah, it's fine, serviceable performances. But Pauline Moran is the one that I think honestly stands out the most as the Woman in Black. She only has a few scenes, but she makes the most of them. I thought she did a really remarkable job showing this look of just sadness and despair on her face. I think part of it was also makeup, but a lot of it was also her performance. When Kid first sees her, it just you automatically start to feel chills, because she does such a good job playing this soulless ghost. I mean, people don't realize how hard that can actually be to pull off, to just believably stand there and put on makeup and act like there's nothing there. Like there's no spirit, there's no anything. Like you're just that you're a spirit, and not over exaggerate things or underdo, or it's just one of those things that, and I don't even know. Underdo, what is that? It's not even a word. But you know what I mean. It's one of those things where it's easy to over exaggerate things when you're playing a ghost and being all spooky, but it's also easy to not really put that much effort into it, because you're thinking, well, I'm dead, so I guess I'm just supposed to just be, just nothing, just put no effort into it whatsoever. And that's not what Pauline did here. And also, when she's supposed to be creepy or genuinely scary, she also pulls that off very well too. Uh, there's quite a few scenes in this that really do live up to the film's reputation, that I honestly would recommend, for them alone, that you do check this film out sometime. Spoilers for those of you who haven't seen the movie, because I'm gonna, in order to talk about the scenes a little bit more in depth, I gotta spoil these sequences. So every time you see the woman in black, it's a sequence that automatically pikes your interest. It just really does get you invested. You're just like, okay, what's going on here? And you're wondering what's going to happen next. And you don't see that many glimpses of her. You see her in passing, very few glimpses throughout. And she doesn't look like she's particularly harmful. She just looks like she's sad, she's depressed, she's lonely. She looks like she might need some help. She doesn't look like somebody who is going to kill you by any means. Like, she doesn't really look like that much of a threat. And that's what makes this sequence later on in the film so effective, because the film fools you. So there's this whole subplot involving this room in the house that Kid is going over to, where he's trying to finish up the proceedings at the house, because a woman who lived there, she passed away, and he's a realtor, I think, so he has to go to the house and find certain materials and essentially finish the procedure of transferring the holdings in the house over to the new owners, or so on and so forth, or into the realty business, that kind of stuff, so it can go up for sale. So there's a subplot involving this room in the house that has a door that's locked, and one of these nights it opens back up. Kid, he goes into the room with the open door, and he hears a kid laughing. He hears the voice of a child laughing, and sees a chair moving on its own, and sees like a little bouncy ball that bounces back at him, which reminded me of The Changeling, which I gotta be honest, I like a lot more than this. The Changeling with George C. Scott, directed by Peter Medak. And that's a nice creepy scene. And he finds this toy soldier, this miniature toy soldier that keeps appearing. And throughout the film, this toy soldier keeps showing up. And whenever it shows up, something supernatural happens. So, Kid, after he's had this harrowing ordeal at the house, he's been terrified, he's at his wit's end, he contracts a fever, and he winds up holed up in some other place. And he's having this nightmares and his dreams that are not very pleasant. He wakes up and he realizes that he has the toy soldier is in his hand. And so understandably he's like, what the heck? Now, actually, I think I got the fever thing wrong. So he gets the fever after this. Sorry, it's been a bit since I saw it. So he's not quite sick with fever yet. I think he would be sick with fever after this event, which makes sense. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't die right there on the spot of a heart attack. But anyway, and if you've seen the scene, you know what I'm talking about. So he has the toy soldier, and he hears the child's laughter again, and so he calls out to the ghost, because he did some research and he knows who the ghost is, and he's like, Nathaniel, is that you? And then the ghost keeps on laughing, and then he hears this voice say, It's for you. And then before he has a chance to register what has happened, the woman in black shows up in probably one of the earliest jump scares. So it shows up and just has this maniac, just demonic grin on her face. She's just just shows up right in his frame of vision and then screams at him. This unearthly scream, just going, ah! And it's just like, oh god. It's very intense sequence. I'm not doing it justice because I make it sound like it's silly or something. But no, trust me, it's actually handled really well. It could have been silly, it could have been laughable, but it's not. It's very unnerving. It's very unsettling. And then you have the twist ending. You have the bleak, dark ending, which, because I'm spoiled by all these other modern horror movies, specifically found footage films that end the same way, where everybody dies, I predicted the ending before I even saw it. And I did not know anything about it beforehand either. So, but I didn't predict the exact way that it ended. I thought it was going to end a little bit more simpler, like the family was going to be in the canoe and then the canoe was going to tip over and they were going to drown. I didn't see the tree falling on them, so that was something I did not see coming. But the ending, that aspect of it, is not really the moment that is particularly chilling to me. The moment that's particularly chilling to me is when you see the woman in black floating on the lake. Like, that's the moment that was like, whoa, like, ooh. And it was a great effect. It was all done practically, probably very simple, like had a little platform under the water or something for the actress to stand on. But the way that it was shot and the way that the effect was done, it was very effective and particularly chilling and very eerie. And that's definitely an image I don't want to see in my life. I don't want to be going on a nice little canoe trip with my family and then turn around and see this creepy ghost looking at me floating above the river. I don't want to see that shit. No. But anyway, yeah, that was a well put together sequence. It's been a well put together stuff. I wanted to mention one more thing about the movie, in particular with the production and art design. I really liked the older technology that was used here. Particularly, I think it was like a older form of tape recorder that uses a phonograph and this other sort of way to listen to messages. I really liked that aspect of the film. I thought it was a nice touch, and that kind of stuff has always fascinated me anyway. And that really was a good way to give the audience little tidbits of information, give them a little morsels of mystery before they reveal more things. The film has a score, but it's nothing particularly that memorable, by Rachel Portman. It's just kind of there. Cinematography by Michael Davis, effectively bleak and dreary, but hey, that's exactly what the film is going for, so bravo. Editing by Lawrence Mary Clark. I wouldn't really say there's anything about the editing that was particularly bad, so I'd say job well done. Good job. I don't really know what else to say about the movie. I probably talked about it more than I honestly thought I was going to, considering it's a fairly straightforward film in terms of its plot, in terms of everything that is going on in the movie. But I just thought it was a little disappointing, a little bit too laborious for my tastes, despite the fact that it has some really effective, genuinely chilling sequences. I just wasn't that drawn into the characters, and overall not as much into the story. I really feel they could have done more with the backstory of the woman in black and really flesh that out more, and as a result, engage the audience more effectively. At least me. But anyway, thanks for watching my review of The Woman in Black. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.